All right, welcome back to Talk Radio 101. This is Derrell Day. I have a great letter I want to read you this morning. It's called A Letter from the Boss. You may want to pay close attention to this one. It's a little lengthy, but I think it's worth reading. It's called A Letter from the Boss. It says, to all my valued employees. There have been some rumblings around the office about the future of this company and more specifically your job. As you know, the economy has changed for the worse and presents many challenges. However, the good news is this: the economy doesn't pose a threat to your job. What does threaten your job, however, is the changing political landscape in the country. However, let me tell you some little tidbits of fact which may help you decide what is in your best interest. Now, once again, this is a letter that their boss wrote to his employees. First, while it's easy to spew rhetoric that casts employers against employees, you have to understand that for every business owner, there is a backstory. And this backstory is often neglected and overshadowed by what you see and hear. Sure, you see me park my Mercedes outside. You've seen my big home at last year's Christmas party. I'm sure all those flashy icons of luxury conjure up some idealized thoughts about my life. However, what you don't see is the backstory. This is a boss writing a letter to his employees. I started this company 28 years ago. At that time, I lived in a 300-square-foot studio apartment for 3 years. My entire living apartment was converted into an office so I could put forth 100% effort into building a company, which, by the way, would eventually employ you. My diet consisted of ramen fried noodles because every dollar I spent went back into this company. I drove a rusty Toyota Corolla with a defective transmission. I didn't have time to date. Oftentimes, I stayed home on weekends while my friends went out drinking and partying. In fact, I was married to my business. Hard work, discipline, and sacrifice. Meanwhile, my friends got jobs. They worked 40 hours a week and made a modest $50K a year and spent every dime they earned. They drove flashy cars and lived in expensive homes and wore fancy designer clothes. Instead of hitting the Nordstroms for the latest hot fashion item, I was trolling through the discount store, extracting any clothing item that didn't look like it was being birthed in the 70s. My friends refinanced their mortgages and lived a life of luxury. I, however, did not. I put my time, my money, and my life into a business with a vision that would eventually someday I, too, would be able to afford those luxuries that my friends supposedly had. So while you physically arrive at the office at 9 a.m., and mentally check in about noon, and then leave at 5 p.m., I don't. There is no off button for me. When you leave the office, you are done and you have a weekend all to yourself. I, unfortunately, do not have that freedom. I eat and breathe this company every minute of the day. There is no rest. There is no weekend. There is no happy hour. Every day this business is attached to my hip like a 1-year-old special needs child. You, of course, only see the fruits of that garden, the nice house, the Mercedes, the vacations. You never really realize the backstory and the sacrifices I've made. Now the economy is falling apart, and I, the guy that made all the right decisions and saved his money, have to bail out all the people who didn't. The people that overspent their paychecks suddenly feel entitled to the same luxuries that I earned and sacrificed a decade of my life for. Yes, business ownership has its benefits, but the price I've paid is steep and not without wounds. Unfortunately, the cost of running this business and employing you is starting to eclipse the threshold of marginal benefit, and let me tell you why. Once again, I'm reading from a letter that a boss wrote to his employees. The boss continues on in the letter and says, I am being taxed to death, and the government thinks I don't pay enough. I have state taxes, federal taxes, property taxes, sales and use taxes, payroll taxes, workers' compensation taxes, unemployment taxes, taxes on taxes. I have to hire a tax man to manage all these taxes, and then guess what? I have to pay taxes for employing him. Government mandates and regulations and all the accounting that goes with it now occupy most of my time. On October 15th, I wrote a check to the U.S. Treasury for $288,000 for quarterly taxes. You know what my stimulus check was? Zero. Nada. Zilch. The question I have is this: who is stimulating the economy? Me, the guy who has provided 14 people good-paying jobs and serves over 2.2 million people a year with a flourishing business? Or is it the single mother sitting at home pregnant with her fourth child waiting for her next welfare check? Obviously, government feels the latter is the economic stimulus of this country. The fact is, if I deducted or stole 50% of your paycheck, you would quit and you wouldn't work here. I mean, why should you? That's nuts. Who wants to get rewarded only 50% of their hard work? Well, I agree, which is why your job is in jeopardy. Here's what many of you don't understand. To stimulate the economy, you need to stimulate what runs the economy. Had suddenly government mandated to me that I didn't need to pay taxes, guess what? Instead of depositing the $288,000 into the Washington black hole, I would have spent it, hired more employees, and generated substantial economic growth. My employees would have enjoyed the wealth of that tax cut with promotions and better salaries, but you can forget it now. When you have a comatose man on the verge of death, you don't defibrillate and shock his thumb thinking that will bring him back to life, do you? Or do you defibrillate his heart? Business is at the heart of America and always has been. To restart it, you must stimulate it, not kill it. Suddenly, the power brokers in Washington believe the poor of America are the essential drivers of the American economic engine. Nothing could be further from the truth, and this type of change you can keep. So where am I going with all this? It's quite simple. If any new taxes are levied on me or my company, my reaction will be swift and simple. I'll fire you and your coworkers. You can then plead with the government to pay for your mortgage, your SUV, and your child's future. Frankly, it isn't my problem anymore. Then I will close this company down, move to another country, and retire. You see, I'm done. I'm done with a country that penalizes the productive and gives to the unproductive. My motivation to work and to provide jobs will be destroyed, and with it will be my citizenship. So if you lose your job, it won't be at the hands of the economy. It will be at the hands of a political hurricane that has swept through this country, steamrolled the Constitution, and will have changed its landscape forever. And if that happens, you can find me sitting on a beach, retired, with no employees to worry about. Signed, the boss. It seems that there is a movement afoot in America today for the government to take from those who are productive, to give to those who are not productive, and to somehow lie about it and say that that is a stimulus to somehow stimulate the economy. Now, you may not like it. You may not even believe it. But if you want to stimulate an economy, you may want to cut checks to people who sign the front of a check and maybe not to people who sign the back of a check. I personally, in my lifetime, have never worked for a poor person. I have never done anything for pay for someone who was unemployed. Every check that I have ever had the opportunity to sign the back of to cash came from, if you look up at the top left-hand corner of your check this Friday, there will be the name of a company. Oh, my goodness, it might even be a corporation. Looking at the front of that check, you see the name of the company, the corporation, at the top left-hand side. Down in the right-hand corner, you will see the signature of a business owner or a principal of a corporation. And right above his name, there'll be an amount, net due, or whatever it says. That's how you get paid. You take it to the bank. You then sign the back of the check. But for some reason, we want to take more from those people who are providing those checks to give people who aren't doing anything at all. And somehow in our scrambled brains, we suck into the argument, we swallow the Kool-Aid that we are stimulating the economy by giving to those to extend unemployment benefits.